Hi Bookworms, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. So this is the first video of 3 book tags that I am doing. I think they fit really well with the festive season, also with it being the end of the year as well. So with further ado, get yourself snuggled up with a blanket, get a hot drink of your choice. In my case, I have got a caramel latte with my Cozy Up with a Hot Hug mug, which I think fits really well for this book tag, because today's book tag is Cosy Christmas book tag. So let's get straight into the video. So this original book tag was done by Call Me After Coffee. I think she did this a couple of years ago, like 2, maybe 3 years ago. So it's not a recent book tag, however I've seen it doing the rounds on BookTube again, and I really liked the questions in this tag, and I actually felt I could answer them quite well because I knew what books to put with each question. So let's get into the first question, which is Twinkling Lights. What is the most beautiful book you own? And pretty much with all of the books that I have answered these questions to, there is not just one single book, there's more than one. But I have 3 books that really fit this really well because they're the most beautiful books that I love. 2 of them pretty much are from Fairy Loot. I pretty much feel like most of my beautiful books I own are from Fairy Loot because of the subscription I have, and they obviously do special editions and they are absolutely beautiful, like Under the Dust Jacket and the Dust Jacket itself. But also I've got this one particular book which I bought purely because I wanted this edition, because I thought this was the most loveliest edition I personally thought, and that is definitely, let me just take a sip of my drink. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is the illustrated anniversary edition. It looks like this. But then we've got these forget-me-not stenciled pages, but then on each end here it's silver, but it's like got like a glittery sort of feel, like shimmer to it. And underneath the dust jacket we have got just a grey naked book, but it's got embossed forget-me-nots. But also underneath on the end papers we've got these beautiful artwork, and then it's the same on the other side but a different one, like so. And then we also have the illustrations inside the book. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but I'm sure everyone and their mum read this book and I'm just really behind. But we then also have these, like we've got some black and white illustrations, but we've also got these coloured illustrations too. I just love the simplicity of this book. I feel sometimes less is more, and this is what I felt with this book. I just think it's beautiful. The story itself, I've read a little bit of it because it was from my November TBR and I pushed it through into December, but from what I've read of it so far, it's a really beautiful story as well. So yeah, that's the first book for that question. And then the other 2 are 2 books from my Fairy Loot edition. So we got 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. So it looks like this. It looks like this. We've got stenciled cranes, and then we've got purple on the sides. But obviously we have then this, if you can see, this like design, and then also like the design on the spine itself, and then obviously underneath the dust jackets we have the beautiful artwork. So I love this book. I love the colours. It's like my sort of colour scheme. However, this one is my ultimate favourite. So it's Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This was my October Fairy Loot, which there isn't actually a full unboxing of this purely because it was delayed and I was too excited. But it looks like this and this, which is completely different to what the original book looks like, but we've got these amazing sprayed edges. So they're pink, but then also here we've got a stenciled edge. And we then also have, under the dust jacket, this absolutely amazing foiled embossed cover, which says The Battle of the Archer and the Fox. So we got the archer, and we have also got the fox there, and then we have this on the end. But then also we have got these beautiful end paper artwork, and I just love it. I absolutely adore the look of this book, and like obviously the artwork inside is just as awesome, but the book itself without the dust jacket is stunning, and I love that the end paper artwork is probably my favourite end paper artwork I have seen so far. So yeah, pretty much all of the books from my fairy loot are my most beautiful books. Then on to question 2, the perfect tree. Will you pay more to get the prettiest edition of a book? Now that is a yes and no for me. It all depends on the book itself. If there is a book that's really like a favourite author of mine, or I really like the sound of this book and I prefer the like the prettier edition to it, I will buy the prettiest edition. But sometimes I do find that they're exactly the same, and I'm like, well, I don't like, I'm paying just a little bit more for blah blah blah. However, my example for this is Dune by Frank Herbert. This cost me £25. £25, and if I'm going to be totally honest, this is a beautiful edition, but for £25 I'm thinking, was it worth all of that money? Like, this is probably my most expensive book I've bought. Like, that hasn't been a box subscription or anything like this. But I saw this edition and I was just like, do you know what? If I'm going to read Dune, or June, whichever you want to call it, I want to have a really awesome edition of it. This was actually a sort of buddy read with Sydney's Patreons. I never got round to it because it is a chunk of a book and I just wasn't in the right mood for it. But it looks like this, and then like that. But we have these beautiful artwork on this. This is absolutely stunning. The attention to detail in this is beautiful, and then it's just like an ombre sort of bit there. Then we've got like the end paper artwork, which is stunning in itself. So we've got that, and then on this side I think, yes, that, which obviously explains the story. And then on the spine we have this. Now I love this. This is just going to be perfect just to put naked on a book spine, like on your spine like that showing. It just has that old vintage feel. And on this it says, I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and free me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. I just think that quote in itself is amazing. So I do it if it's like a favourite book and I'm like, oh, it's in a different like edition, and I'm thinking, yes, do you know what? I want it. However, I am someone who sort of will compare. Like, if there's like a drastic change to like what the original book is, then I'll be like, yeah, do you know what, that's worth the money. But if there isn't, then no. Like, I, to be honest, won't buy a book just because it's signed. Like, I have done, but purely because that was the only thing that was available to me rather than anywhere else. But I won't just buy a book just because it's signed, because personally, if I read a book and I unhaul it, it's a bit pointless. Like, I will keep books that I know I'm going to reread and will constantly love. But if I've read a book and I wouldn't reread it again, then I'll get rid of. And sometimes I feel like I'm paying like a couple quid more just because of a signed edition. Yeah, so I am a yes and a no. It all depends on the book, whether it's like an author I absolutely adore and think, nope, I want to treat myself. It all depends. Next is number 3, which is Build a Snowman. It says make a Christmas book stack, colour or theme. So I'll insert a picture here of that because I'm not going to do it on video because I know full well it would go to completely wrong. Then a question for Crackling Fire. What book makes you feel warm and cosy? And for that, I have 2. So going Christmassy, Heidi Swain. This is particularly her newest book, but I haven't read it. I'm just on about more her as an author, but this is Underneath the Christmas Tree. But I find all of the Heidi Swain books I have read have just given me such a fuzzy feeling in my heart. Her romance books, and you know me, I'm not big on romance. Like, I will read it, and the romance books I've read, I've enjoyed, but they're not my go-to books. Like, I have to be in the right mood for them. And sometimes if I'm in a mood and I read loads of romance, I get sick and tired of them as well. So I'm one of those people who it has to be in like limited sort of. But I have never been disappointed with any of Heidi Swain books. Like, I'm slowly going through her series, but specifically her Christmas books that I've read, and 2 like not Christmassy books. I've absolutely loved them. I love the way she writes. I love how you're so invested in all of the characters, and it's just such a cozy read for me. Like, there's nothing horrible with it. It's easy writing, but not in a like, it's not good writing. It's just, you don't have to think. You can just read and get enveloped into all of the feelings that all the characters feel. And I really do love her books. They're just so comfy and cozy, and I don't know, it's just because of the romance and how sweet the romance is, you just are left with a beaming smile, and you're just constantly going, oh, like that. And then also, I couldn't not do my beloved graphic novel series, Heartstopper. This is volume 1 by Alice Osman. I just love these 2. I love Charlie and I love Nick, and they are just wonderful characters. Their story is just wonderful as well. The representation that all these graphic novels have, like mental health, eating disorders, homophobia, coming out, all of the representation is just done so well. It is a graphic novel, there's not like, it's not a story, but it's so impactful. And again, this is just 2 characters that I'm fully invested in. I absolutely adore. I have felt so heartwarming by them and the story. I have blubbered my eyes as well, just because of how emotional the story is. It's just another book that leaves me with a grinning face, and I always feel like I'm in a really good mood after the book. Then we're on to Knee-High Socks. What is the longest book you have read? Now, I have 2, because one of the books that I thought was the longest book I read actually isn't, compared to this other book. So Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. This was my pick for this book. I was like, oh, this is the longest book I read. But actually, no, because A Court of Silver Flames is longer than this. But I've chosen this and the other one, not the other one for the pages, but this one purely because I did feel like this felt like a really, really long story. Not in a bad way. This is a 5-star read. I absolutely loved it. But I felt it was a very slow burn story. It really was very descriptive. It told, you set the scene. It was really, really, really brilliant. But I felt like I had been reading this book for months and months and months. Not in a bad way, but that's how the story made me feel. Like, not once did I get bored of the length or anything like that. It just felt like the story was going on and on and on in a beautifully way, which made me feel like this was a really, really massive long book. But actually, when you look at the pages, it wasn't. But I absolutely adore this book. I love it. I'm so glad I got it and read it, because it is a book that would have intimidated me. But I'm glad I did read it, and there's certainly not disappointment. But it's my first ever J. Kristoff book, so I kind of feel like I should have read all of his other books, because this is probably really high standard, and the other books might not be as high standard after that, but we'll see. But in regards to page-wise, A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J Maas is my longest book I have read. If you have been on my channel since day one, you know I am a big Sarah J Maas stan. I love her books. ACOTAR was my favourite series. However, Throne of Glass sort of... I haven't finished Throne of Glass. I'm behind in that, and I will eventually finish it, but right now I haven't. But it's in par. Like ACOTAR, I have so far finished the series and I do love it. Throne of Glass, the books I have read, they have certainly, for me, got more action and more fantasy side of things. But this is the longest book I read. This follows Nestor and, God, I've forgotten his name, Cassian. How can I forget his name? I love ACOTAR. I love this. It's smutty. It's got mental health representation, which is absolutely on fire. It is just the best representation I personally have found. But you know, this was a long book, but I read this very fast. That's how easy the story was and how much you couldn't put it down. But ACOTAR is a beloved series of mine. I love Sarah J Maas's writing, so we have that. Next, we have Ugly Sweaters. What is the ugliest book you own? Now, I hate these questions because I don't like really saying that books are ugly because I don't feel like that's nice. However, these 4 books, I will be honest, do not have the eye-catching covers that usually... Like, if there's an eye-catching cover and I love it, I will buy the book regardless of what it's about. Sometimes I'll just buy the book because of the cover. I don't even know what it's about. I haven't even bothered reading. But sometimes there are covers like these where they aren't, and they're a bit like miserable and nothing really sort of suggests what the story is about. So then I do have to then read a synopsis, and then actually the synopsis itself sounds really good, so I get the book. So the first 2 books are by the same author, and the other 2 books are by the same author. So first up, we've got by B.A. Paris, we've got Behind Closed Doors, and we've got The Breakdown. And what I mean by these covers is it's like this. It's not really eye-catching. It's not really bright colours that sometimes draw you in. You know, it's like a white and a bit of blue. And obviously this is like by the looks of it, a broken glass, and this is obviously a door. So it does sort of tie in with what like the title is. But, you know, I can easily walk past these books and not be drawn to them. The reason why I got these books is because I do like B.A. Paris as a thriller author, and so it was more, I actually got these books because of what the synopsis was rather than the cover. But I am someone who tends to, if the cover looks really eye-catching, it draws me in, I tend to want to buy that book just purely because of that. And also, which I found with a lot of James Patterson books, these. So I've got First to Die, which is literally this drab colour. Like, it's not an eye-catching colour. This to me is just like a really miserable day cover. And like I said, it is literally just got this title. There's nothing really much drawing in this book. And with Invisible, we have, it's like obviously a red colour is a bit more vibrant, and we have got a person. But like I said with B.A. Paris books, I will easily walk past these books and not be drawn to them. I will just like walk past them, not notice. The only reasons I've got these books is James Patterson is an autobi author. I absolutely love his thrillers, and these books, this is part of like a series, like I said, I can't remember what series it's. Women's Murder Club series. This is the first book I want to actually eventually get all the books, but there's a lot of books. But like this is first for series that I wanted to read, and this is like a standalone. But it sounds really good. But the reason again these were bought was because James Patterson is an autobi author, so obviously I tend to buy most of his books if they sound good. Next, we have Blizzards, a book set in winter, or a book that gives you the chills, dark themes. So I've got books that all set in winter time, or they've got like the winter feels. So first up, I had to involve A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. this is set in Christmas, so it's going to be winter because it's December, it's winter, and it is just a very bah humbug book. It's very drab, it's very moody at times because of the character, and so I just feel like this book really fits it in because it is winter, because it's in December, it's Christmas, but also the character and the story itself is very drab and very cold and stuff, because obviously with Scrooge being, you know, Scrooge. So I had to put that in because it really does fit the vibe. And also The Winter Garden by Alexandra Bell. I haven't read this, but it's got a title Winter. It's set in winter because it's sort of based in New Year's Eve sort of thing, and obviously it's a garden, so it's like wintry vibe gardens. But I haven't read the book to tell you whether it's really set in winter or whether it's just the name. I've also done The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearce because this is set in the Swiss Alps. It's an isolated hotel, and there is a massive big snowstorm that happens, so that has definitely got the winter films because it's snow, and you know, come on, it is winter when it's snowing. And then also following with the snow vibes, we've got Allie Reynolds' Shiver. This is set obviously on the French Alps, and the main character is starting a snowboarding career, and again this is sort of, is there a snowstorm? No, there's not a snowstorm, but they're obviously skiing on the French Alps, and they decide to play an icebreaker game which turns deadly. So again, this has got the snow vibes. Snow is winter in my opinion. It's freezing cold. Like, I love the snow, but it's freezing. Then we have the last question, home for the holidays. For the rereaders out there, are there any books that feel like going home? Now, I am a rereader. However, I only just started rereading books this year. Literally this month, if I'm going to be exact. Now, that's not because, and I am a rereader purely because there are a few books that I will happily reread. However, I am someone that I have to have a big time difference before I read it. Like, you know, if I read a book and I'm thinking, oh, I really want to reread it, 6 months is far too soon because I will read the book, I will remember everything, and I won't enjoy it as much. So a year or much longer really is more for me, purely because then I don't fully have it in my head remembering, and when I start reading the book, yes, it all comes back to me, but it's not freshly in my mind. Like, I read, like, you know, the first chapter and I'm like, oh, I know what happens, blah blah blah. Like, it does come back to me while I'm reading. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books that are like my definite I will reread, and the first 2 are by the same author and it's part of a series, which is what I have just started rereading and I have finished. So that's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone and Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling. Obviously I am aware it's J.K. Rowling, so I know what's going on. I'm not a supporter of her, but I do like the books. But the last time I read this series particularly is when I was 7, 8, 9. I first read Philosopher's Stone. I actually didn't read it. My year 5 teacher read it to us as a class, and I absolutely adored the book, so I ended up continuing reading the series. So The Chamber of Secrets is a book that I read, and all the rest of the books I did read. So I must admit, when I actually picked this up last night and finished it in one go, but when I read this, it all came back to me. I remembered things. There were certain bits that I thought, oh, I forgot about that, which was lovely. But as I was reading it, it was all coming back to me. However, with Philosopher's Stone, because I didn't physically read it, someone read it to me, it felt like it was a complete new story to me because I hadn't physically read it for it to be fully stored in my head. But even so, rereading these books, it was just, I thought, oh my god, I'm not going to enjoy it because I know what happens, and you know, I've watched the movies and everything like that, so it's fresh in my mind. But the books are so different to the movies that it's nice to have bits that weren't in the movies, And even though I have read them, it was years and years ago, and it felt like I was rereading the story again, but with fresher eyes, because I read this as a kid. Some of the bits that were mentioned never really took notice of me, but now as older, I noticed, like, you know, the bullying. You know, it didn't bother me so much then, but now as an adult, actually, it really annoyed me, and you could see why Malfoy bullied Harry. You as an adult, you understood the reason why. The same as, like, in some sense, there's racism not by colour, but more by who you are, like with Muggle bloods, with them being Muggle born and their parents are human, and not witches or wizards, and like that racism sort of sense of them saying, like, you know, they're not pure and blah blah blah. So, like, as a kid, I didn't obviously notice any of that or pay attention to that, but as an adult, I was like, ooh, ooh, ooh. So these are the two that I just recently reread, and I'm glad I did, because it really got me back into why I love reading. It's what Harry Potter as a series is what got me reading. That's why they are still beloved books to me, because they got me reading, and I knew I loved the magic side of things and the fantasy side of things, and you know, I really did resonate a bit with Harry himself and stuff. So it's books that I grew up with, books that do have my heart. Movies are a Christmas tradition in my house as well. So as much as I know J.K. Rowling is a problematic author and what she has been doing to the LGBTQI plus community, and I am not at all supporting anything she says, but I am someone who can sort of separate the author and the book, and also the books are secondhand, so none of the money went into her pocket anyway. But they were the perfect books for me to reread, especially after having such a few weeks off reading. And I wouldn't say I was fully in a reading slump, but I didn't have my reading mojo where I wanted to constantly read. But after reading them, all I want to do is read, which is perfect, because I am on the end of the month, end of the year, and I really want to bash out as many books as I can, even though I'm way over my Goodreads. Like, my Goodreads was 100 books and I'm on 250 or more, so it's not that I want to get them out to get to my Goodreads like challenge. It's just I have dwindled in my books that I wanted to get my love of reading back, and Harry Potter did that for me. Another reread, which I haven't reread but I want to do for next year, is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I love this book. It's a book within a book within a book, and I just love it. It is just amazing. This is like still like a firm favourite book in, like, you know, in my life. I just adore everything about this story, and it's been like over a year now since I read it, so I definitely want to read it at the beginning of 2022, purely because I miss this world. And I do have Night Circus by Erin. However, I haven't read it yet, but I don't think I'm going to love Night Circus as much as I did with this. So yeah, this is a reread and a beloved one that will happen and happen and happen again, because the world and the story itself is just fantastic. So I'm definitely going to be doing this the start of 2022. Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. We know I love ACOTAR. This series will get reread and reread and reread and reread, and I won't get sick of it because I love it. I love Freya. I love Reese, and I have not read this series in a while. Like, the last book I read was A Court of Silver Flames. That was the start of this year, I think. Was it the start of this year? I'm sure it was the start of this year. It feels like a long time since I've, like, I can't remember. Yeah, the start of this year. It's 2021, yeah. So I have not read A Court of Thorns and Roses since last year. It was the start of 2020 that I read it, I think. Or it could have been 2019. It might have actually been the end of... No. I don't know. I can't remember. I think it was 2020 because it's when lockdown happened. Whatever. It's been a while. I don't get me wrong, I do know the story, but I miss the actual lead up to I can't say it. I just miss Farah and Rysand's lead up to their romance and all that, so I definitely want to reread this again just for that, just because it's brilliant. And then obviously another Sarah J. Maas book, Crescent City. I read this quite a while ago too. I think it was the beginning of 2020 as well. I'm trying to find out. But I want to reread this soon because obviously the second book comes out. And if I'm going to be totally honest, I can't remember what happens in this, which is strange because I know I read this after A Court of Thorns and Roses. However, I can still remember A Court of Thorns and Roses. I can't remember fully what happened in this. So yeah, which I love because the fact that I can't remember it means that when I reread it, it's going to be a proper jog in the memory and stuff. So yeah, here are the questions. That is all for the Cosy Christmas book tag. Thank you for watching. I will put the original video down below and the questions down as well should you want to join in and do this tag too. But yeah, thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves and I'll see you again soon. Bye.